Don't come home, Dad. Monica doesn't want you here. Those were the words my son said to me on Thanksgiving morning. He told me I was an embarrassment to his new high-class friends. So I took a bottle of wine worth $3,000 and ate turkey at a roadside diner with a total stranger. My son thought he was just cutting a toxic old man out of his life. He didn't know that he was setting in motion a chain of events that would destroy his company and leave him begging on his knees 5 years later. At my daughter's wedding, everyone found out who that stranger at the diner really was, and the look on my son's face was worth every single tear I shed that night. I am Harlan Cross, 76 years old, and before I tell you how I found a family that actually loved me, I need you to hit that like button if you believe respect is earned, not inherited. Subscribe to the channel if you have ever been underestimated by the people who were supposed to love you the most. Let me know in the comments which city you are watching from. I always read them. The steam formed, the iron hissed as I pressed the collar of my best dress shirt. It was a flannel button-down, clean and sturdy, the kind of shirt a man wears when he wants to look respectable but ready to work. My hands, thick with calluses from 40 years as a structural steel foreman in Chicago, moved with a gentle precision that surprised most people. I was humming an old tune, feeling a rare lightness in my chest. It was Thanksgiving. For the first time in 3 years, I was going to be inside my son Derek's house. On the kitchen counter sat the prize, a bottle of Chateau Margaux vintage 1982. I had bought it for $50 back when $50 was a week's worth of groceries. I had saved it through layoffs, through the recession, through the night my wife passed away. I had saved it for a moment of pure victory, and today felt like a victory. Derek had finally invited me over. Sure, his wife Monica made a face every time she looked at my beat-up Ford truck or my work boots, but today was different. Today was family. I checked the clock. 4 in the afternoon. Dinner was at 5. I unplugged the iron and reached for the bottle, carefully wiping a speck of dust from the glass. I imagined the look on Derek's face when I poured him a glass. Maybe he would finally understand that his old man had some taste, that I wasn't just a relic of a blue-collar past he was trying so hard to forget. The phone rang. The harsh mechanical trill cut through the quiet of my small house. I smiled when I saw Derek's name on the caller ID. He was probably calling to ask if I needed directions to the new house in the suburbs. "Hello, son," I answered, my voice raspy but warm. "I am just putting on my coat. I will be there in 20 minutes. There was a silence on the other end. Not a comfortable silence. It was the kind of silence that happens before a structure collapses, the groan of metal bending under too much weight. "Dad, listen," Derek said. His voice was tight, rushed. "You can't come." I froze. My hand was halfway into the sleeve of my heavy wool coat. "What do you mean I can't come? Is everything okay? Is Sarah okay?" "Everyone is fine," Derek said, and I could hear the irritation creeping into his tone. "It is just that Monica invited some people from the country club. The Hamptons, the Millers. These are important investors, Dad. People I need to impress for the firm." I didn't understand. I gripped the phone tighter. "I won't say a word, Derek. I will just sit in the corner and eat. I haven't seen you or your sister in months." "That is the point, Dad," he snapped. "Look, Monica thinks your presence would be distracting. You know how you are. You eat loud. You tell those long, boring stories about the steel mill. You wear those clothes that smell like mothballs. It just doesn't fit the vibe we are going for. It is an optics thing. You understand business, don't you?" My heart didn't break. At 76, hearts don't break anymore. They just get tired. I looked down at my shirt. I had used the good starch. I had polished my boots. "I have a bottle of wine," I said quietly. "A 1982 Margaux. I was going to open it with you." Derek sighed, a long, exasperated sound that I had heard 1,000 times since he met Monica. "Save it, Dad. Drink it yourself. Look, I have to go. The caterers are here. We will send you some leftovers next week or something. Just show up, okay? It would be really awkward for everyone. The line went dead. I stood there in the middle of my living room for a long time. The house was silent. The only sound was the refrigerator humming and the wind rattling the window pane. I looked at the table where I had set out a single plate for breakfast. I looked at the walls covered in photos of Derek and Sarah growing up. Derek at his graduation smiling with his arm around me. Derek catching his first fish. The boy who used to run to the door when I came home covered in soot and sweat. That boy was gone. He had been replaced by a man who worried about optics and catering. I took the coat off. Then I put it back on. I could have stayed home. I could have made a sandwich and watched football until I fell asleep in the armchair. That is what old men are supposed to do when they are discarded. We are supposed to fade away quietly. But there was a fire in my belly that hadn't gone out yet. I was Harlan Cross. I had built the skeletons of half the skyscrapers in downtown Chicago. I had walked beams 60 stories in the air without a safety harness. I wasn't going to let a phone call turn me into a ghost. I grabbed the bottle of wine. I grabbed my keys. I walked out into the biting cold. The sky was a bruised purple heavy with snow. My truck, a 15-year-old F-150 that had more rust than paint, roared to life with a defiant cough. I backed out of the driveway, not looking back at the empty house. I drove aimlessly at first. I drove past the neighborhoods where the windows were glowing with warm golden light. I could see silhouettes of families gathering around tables. I could see laughter. I could see belonging. It felt like I was watching a movie in a language I used to speak but had forgotten. My stomach growled. I realized I hadn't eaten since morning because I was saving my appetite for Derek's roast turkey. I found myself on the outskirts of town near the highway on-ramp. There was a Denny's diner there, its neon sign flickering against the falling snow. It was one of the few places open on Thanksgiving night. The parking lot was mostly empty, just a few long haul trucks and beat-up sedans. It was a place for people who had nowhere else to be. Perfect, I muttered to myself. I parked the truck and tucked the bottle of 1982 Margaux under my heavy coat. I knew they didn't have a liquor license, and I knew they probably wouldn't let me drink it. But I didn't care. I was going to drink this wine tonight, even if I had to drink it out of a coffee mug. The diner smelled like stale coffee, maple syrup, and floor cleaner. The fluorescent lights were too bright, humming with a low buzz that matched the ringing in my ears. There were only 3 other people in the place. A trucker sleeping in a booth, a waitress who looked like she would rather be anywhere else, and a young man sitting alone at a table near the window. I asked for a booth in the back, but as I walked past the young man, I paused. He was wearing a suit. A very expensive suit, if my eyes didn't deceive me. Italian cut silk blend. But he looked like he had been dragged through hell. His tie was loosened. His hair was a mess, and he was staring at a plate of cold fries with a look of absolute devastation. He had a phone in his hand, and he kept tapping the screen, waiting for it to light up. It never did. He looked exactly how I felt. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was the fact that eating alone suddenly felt unbearable. Maybe it was the father in me recognizing a kid who had just taken a beating from life. "Is this seat taken?" I asked, my voice gruff. The young man looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed. He really looked at me with a mixture of confusion and annoyance. Then he looked at the empty diner full of empty tables. "Take your pick, old-timer," he muttered, gesturing to the whole restaurant. I sat down opposite him. I pulled the bottle of wine out from under my coat and set it on the table with a heavy thud. The dark glass gleamed under the cheap lights. "I am not sitting at those tables," I said. "I am sitting here, and I am drinking this. You look like you could use a glass." The young man stared at the bottle. Then he stared at me. He let out a short, dry laugh that lacked any humor. "I don't think they allow BYOB in here," he said. I waved my hand dismissively. "I am 76. What are they going to do round me? I am Harlan." He hesitated, then extended a hand. His grip was weak, shaky. "Leo," he said. "And yeah, Harlan, I could use a glass. I could use the whole damn bottle." I flagged down the waitress and asked for 2 paper cups. She rolled her eyes but brought them. I popped the cork with a small pocket knife I kept on my keychain. The sound was a soft pop, a whisper of luxury in a room that smelled of grease. I poured the dark red liquid into the wax paper cups. "To family," I said, raising my cup. "May they rot in hell." Leo's eyes widened. He clinked his paper cup against mine. "To family," he repeated, his voice cracking. "The ones who stab you in the back and twist the knife." We drank. The wine was exquisite. It tasted of blackberries, oak, and thyme. It tasted like 30 years of patience. But as I watched Leo down his expensive wine like it was cheap water, I knew this wasn't just a random meeting. This kid was in trouble. Deep trouble. And for the first time all day, I didn't feel like a useless old man. I felt like a foreman looking at a rookie who was about to drop a girder on his own foot. So I said, leaning back against the vinyl seat, "Who kicked you out? Your wife or your daddy?" Leo looked at me shocked. "How did you know, kid?" I said. "I have been reading blueprints for 40 years. You have structural failure written all over your face. Talk to me. My son won't listen to my stories, so you are going to have to." And that was how it started. In a Denny's over a stolen bottle of wine while the snow buried the city outside. I didn't know it then, but I wasn't just sharing a drink. I was investing in the only thing that would matter 5 years later. The dark ruby liquid swirled in the wax-coated paper cup, looking almost criminal against the stark white rim. It was a $3,000 vintage sitting on a laminate table that had seen too many elbows and spilled coffees. I watched the young man across from me, Leo, stare at the cup as if it held the cure for a disease he didn't know he had. Around us, the diner was alive with the low hum of loneliness. Silverware clattered against ceramic plates in the kitchen, and the smell of frying bacon and old grease hung heavy in the air. It was the perfume of Thanksgiving for the forgotten. Leo took a sip. His eyes widened slightly, the rich oak and blackberry notes of the Margot cutting through the despair on his face. For a second, he wasn't a ruined businessman in a crumpled Italian suit. He was just a kid tasting something good for the first time in a long while. "That is not diner wine," he said, his voice raspy. I took a sip from my own paper cup. The taste brought back a flood of memories. Anniversaries with my wife. The day I paid off the mortgage. Moments that felt like a lifetime ago. "No, it is not," I replied, setting the cup down carefully to avoid the sticky spot on the table. "It is the best bottle I own. I was saving it for family. Turns out the turkey tastes better here anyway." Leo let out a bitter laugh that turned into a cough. He ran a hand through his messy hair, and I noticed his fingers were shaking. On the table next to him was a chaotic pile of papers, blueprints, legal documents, and a tablet that had gone dark. "Family," he muttered the word, tasting like poison in his mouth. "My father died 3 months ago, pancreatic cancer. He built Vesper Group from a garage in Detroit. Built it into an empire. He told me on his deathbed that I was the only one who understood his vision." He took another long drink of the wine, draining half the cup. "So what happened?" I asked, leaning back against the vinyl booth. The leather was cracked and taped over with duct tape that scratched against my coat. Leo gestured to the papers. "My stepmother happened. Her and the board of directors. Apparently, I am too young, too idealistic, too emotionally unstable to run a billion-dollar infrastructure company. They voted me out this morning, on Thanksgiving. They invoked a clause in my father's will that I didn't even know existed. I lost the company. I lost the house. I lost everything my dad built because I couldn't fix one stupid structural flaw in our flagship project. He slammed his hand on the table, causing the paper cups to jump. They said if I could solve the wind shear issue on the Helix Tower by the end of the year, I could keep my seat. But I can't. Nobody can. The engineering firm we hired said it is impossible without redesigning the entire foundation, which would bankrupt us. So I am out. I looked at the papers. Blueprints. I knew blueprints better than I knew the back of my own hand. I had spent 40 years smelling ozone and welding fumes, standing on girders 600 feet in the air, screaming over the sound of rivet guns. I reached out and pulled the top sheet toward me. Mind if I take a look? I asked. Leo looked at me with skepticism. No offense, Harlan, but these are complex structural schematics for a 70-story twisted facade. It is not exactly assembling a bookshelf. I ignored him. I put on my reading glasses, the ones with the taped arm, and smoothed out the paper. My eyes scanned the lines, the load-bearing calculations, the stress points. It was a beautiful design, ambitious, elegant. But as my finger traced the distribution of weight along the chaotic northwest face, I stopped. I saw it. It was subtle. A rookie mistake hidden under layers of complex calculus. The kind of thing a computer model misses, but a foreman who has felt a building sway in a blizzard feels in his bones. You've got too much tension on the secondary trusses here, I said, tapping a spot on the blueprint with my thick, calloused finger. And your load transfer is relying on a rigid connection. Leo blinked. What? I pulled a cheap ballpoint pen from my pocket. Look here, kid. You are trying to fight the wind. You have built this thing to stand still like a brick wall. But Chicago wind doesn't respect brick walls. It respects things that move. I flipped the blueprint over to the blank side. With steady strokes, I drew a rough sketch. It wasn't pretty, but it was accurate. You don't need a stronger foundation, I said, my voice dropping into that authoritative tone I used to use on the job site. You need a floating counterbalance, right here on the 40th floor. And you need to switch these rigid joints to pivot bearings. Let the building dance with the wind, not fight it. If you do that, you reduce the shear force by 30%. Leo stared at the napkin sketch. He looked at my drawing, then flipped the blueprint back over his eyes, darting back and forth. He pulled out his phone and started typing furiously into a calculator app. Silence stretched between us. The waitress came by to refill our water, but Leo waved her away without looking up. His breath was coming faster now. Holy God, he whispered. What is it? I asked, taking another sip of the wine. The math, he said, looking up at me with wide, disbelief-filled eyes. The math works. If we redistribute the load like you drew, the stress on the foundation drops below the danger threshold. We wouldn't need to dig. We would just need to retrofit the joints. He looked at me as if I had just performed a magic trick. Who are you? He asked. You said you were Harlan. But who are you really? I am just a guy who spent 40 years putting steel together, I said, wiping a crumb from my shirt. I was a foreman on the Sears Tower retrofit. I worked on the Trump building. I have seen more steel go up in this city than you have seen hot dinners. Computers are great, kid, but computers don't know what it feels like when a rivet pops. Leo grabbed the napkin like it was a winning lottery ticket. He held it with both hands. This saves the project, he said, his voice trembling. This saves everything. If I bring this to the board on Monday, they can't fire me. I solved the unsolvable problem. He reached across the table and grabbed my hand. His grip was strong this time. Desperate. Thank you, he said. I don't know how to repay you. You don't owe me anything, I said, pulling my hand back gently. Just promise me one thing. When you get back to the top, don't become like the people who kicked you down. Don't forget what it feels like to sit in a Denny's on Thanksgiving with nothing but a stranger and a paper cup. I will never forget, Leo vowed. Give me your number, please. I want to keep you updated. I want to hire you. I chuckled, shaking my head. I am retired, Leo. I am done with cold mornings and hard hats. Just as a consultant, he pleaded. Please. I need someone who sees things the computers miss. I looked at his face. It was the same look my son Derek used to have when he needed help with his homework. Open, honest, hopeful, before the world and his wife changed him. I took the pen and wrote my landline number on the corner of his blueprint. Don't lose it, I said, and don't call before 9. I like to sleep in. Leo looked at the number like it was a sacred text. He carefully folded the blueprint and the napkin, tucking them into his inside pocket. I have to go, he said, standing up. I have to run these numbers through the simulation software. Harlan, you have no idea what you just did. Go, I said, waving him off. Go save your empire. He threw $100 bill on the table, for the waitress grabbed his coat and practically ran out the door. I watched him go, the bell above the door jingling cheerfully. I sat there alone again. The diner suddenly felt quieter, cooler. I looked at the empty paper cup across from me. He won't call, I told myself. They never do. Once they get what they need, the rich kids always forget the old man in the flannel shirt. I finished the rest of the wine alone. It still tasted good, but the bitterness was creeping back in. I corked the empty bottle and put it back in my coat pocket. A souvenir of the night, I gave $1 million idea away for free. I drove home through the snow, the streets empty and silent. My house was dark when I pulled up. No cars in the driveway, no lights in the window. Just the cold reality of a life that had outlasted its usefulness. I went to sleep that night thinking about Derek, wondering if he enjoyed the turkey, wondering if he even mentioned my name. I doubted it. I was just a shadow now, a ghost he was trying to exorcise. But as I drifted off, I kept seeing Leo's face, the spark in his eyes when he saw the solution. Maybe, just maybe, this one would be different. I didn't know it then, but that night was the end of Harlan the retiree, and the beginning of Harlan the legend. Because 3 days later, on a Tuesday morning, while I was making oatmeal, the phone rang. And it wasn't a telemarketer. 3 months of silence followed that night at the diner. 3 months where the snow turned to slush, and the slush turned to the gray rain of a Chicago March. I hadn't heard a word from Leo Vance. I told myself I didn't care. I told myself he was just another suit who got what he needed and moved on. That is the way of the world. You build the foundation, and the people in the penthouse forget you exist. But I had heard even less from my own son. Not a Christmas card. Not a phone call on New Year's Eve. Just a cold, empty silence that filled my house louder than any noise. Then, on a Tuesday morning, while I was drinking my coffee and watching the rain streak against the window, a Range Rover pulled into my driveway. I knew that engine purr. It was Derek's car. My heart did a stupid thing. It leaped. It fluttered in my chest like a trapped bird. After everything he said to me on Thanksgiving, after the humiliation, I still wanted to see him. That is the curse of being a father. You can't turn the love off no matter how much you want to. I opened the door before they even knocked. Derek stood there looking pale and frantic. Monica was beside him holding a Tupperware container. She was wearing a trench coat that probably cost more than my truck, and her hair was done up in that perfect stiff way that meant she had just come from the salon. Dad. Derek said, his voice cracking. Can we come in? Of course, I stepped aside. They walked into my small living room, looking around like they were entering a cave. Monica placed the Tupperware on the coffee table. I made you an apple pie, Harlan, she said, flashing a tight smile. I know how much you love sweets. I looked at the pie. The crust was woven in a perfect machine-made lattice. The edges were crimped with a uniformity no human hand could achieve. I had seen that exact pie at Costco 3 days ago. $5.99. She hadn't made it. She had peeled the sticker off. "Thank you, Monica," I said, sitting down in my armchair. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" Derek sat on the edge of the sofa. He was wringing his hands. I noticed he was wearing his Rolex, the gold one with the blue face, but he looked like he hadn't slept in a week. "We are in trouble, Dad," Derek said. "Bad trouble." I leaned forward. "What kind of trouble? Is it Sarah? Is someone sick?" No, nothing like that. It is the business." He put his head in his hands. His shoulders started to shake. It was a performance I had seen before when he was a teenager trying to get out of trouble for crashing my car. But this time it felt heavier. "The market shifted," Derek choked out. "We leveraged too much on the commercial development downtown. The investors got spooked by the interest rates. They pulled out, Dad. They all pulled out." Monica reached over and rubbed his back, looking at me with wide, watery eyes. "We might lose everything, Harlan," she whispered. "The house, the cars. We might have to pull the kids out of private school. We don't know where we will go." I watched them. My gut was tightening. The same instinct that told me a beam wasn't safe was screaming at me right now. Something was off. Derek's shoes were new. Monica's diamond earrings caught the light. People on the verge of bankruptcy don't look this polished. "How much?" I asked. My voice was steady, but my stomach was churning. Derek looked up. His eyes were red. "200,000, he said. "Just to cover the bridge loan. If I can pay the bank by Friday, I can save the company. I can turn it around, Dad. I just need a lifeline." $200,000. I looked at the fake apple pie. I looked at my son. "That is every penny I have, Derek," I said quietly. "That is my IRA. That is the money from Mom's life insurance." "I know," Monica interjected, "and we would never ask if we weren't desperate. But it is just a loan, Harlan. 6 months. Once the market corrects itself, we will pay you back with interest. 10% interest." "I don't want interest," I snapped. "I want the truth." "Is this going to fix it?" "Really fix it?" Derek nodded vigorously. "Yes. Absolute. It saves us." I looked at his hands. Soft hands. Hands that never held a shovel or a welding torch. He was my boy. He was the baby I held when he had a fever. He was the toddler I taught to walk. He was the man who told me not to come to Thanksgiving because I was an embarrassment. But he was still my son. And I was an old man. What did I need money for? I had my Social Security. I had a roof. If I died with money in the bank, it would just go to him anyway. Why not give it to him now, when he said he needed it? I stood up. The decision tasted like ash in my mouth. "I will have to sell the woodshop," I said. "The small plot of land behind the house where I kept my tools and did my carpentry. It was my sanctuary. I had planned to spend my retirement there making furniture." Derek flinched, but he didn't say no. He didn't say, "Dad, don't sell the shop." "Okay," he said softly. I went to the bank that afternoon. Derek drove me. He waited in the car while I went inside. He said he couldn't bear the shame of walking in with me. The bank manager was an old friend of mine named Gary. He looked at the withdrawal slip, and then he looked at me over his glasses. "Harlan, are you sure about this?" Gary asked, his voice low. "There are penalties for early withdrawal on the retirement fund, and selling the land that fast meant taking a hit on the value." "I am sure, Gary," I said, signing the paper. My hand didn't shake. Family is family. It took 2 days to clear everything. I sold my tools to a pawn shop for pennies on the dollar. I sold the land to a developer who had been eyeing it for a parking lot. I emptied the accounts that took me 40 years of sweat and overtime to build. On Friday morning, Derek came back alone. He walked into the kitchen where I was drinking coffee. I had the cashier's check on the table. $200,000. It was a piece of paper that represented my entire life's work. It was my safety net. Without it, I was one bad fall away from being a ward of the state. "Here," I said, sliding the check across the laminate table. Derek didn't look at me. His eyes locked onto the check. He reached out and snatched it. His fingers were fast, greedy. He held it up to the light, checking the amount. A smile broke across his face. Not a smile of relief. A smile of triumph. Like he had just won a bet. "Thanks, Dad," he said, slipping the check into his jacket pocket. "You have no idea what this means." "Are you going to stay for coffee?" I asked. "I bought some donuts." Derek checked his gold watch. "Can't," he said, tapping the pocket where the money was. "I have to get this to the bank before noon to stop the foreclosure. Lots of paperwork. You know how it is." He turned to leave. He didn't hug me. He didn't shake my hand. He didn't say "I love you." He walked out the door, and I watched through the window as he practically ran to his car. He got in and punched the steering wheel in excitement. I saw him pull out his phone and make a call. He was laughing. I stood there in the quiet kitchen. The box of donuts was unopened on the counter. The coffee was getting cold. My gut was screaming now. It was a siren wailing in my head. Why was he laughing? If he was on the brink of ruin, shouldn't he be relieved? Shouldn't he be humbled? I walked over to the trash can where Monica had thrown the apple pie container. I pulled it out. Underneath the Costco sticker, there was a receipt stuck to the bottom of the plastic. It wasn't from Costco. It was from a high-end bakery in the airport terminal. O'Hare International Airport. Dated this morning. Why were they at the airport if they were so broke they were about to lose their house? Why buy a pie at the airport and bring it here? A cold feeling started at the base of my spine and crawled up my neck. It wasn't the cold of the Chicago winter. It was the cold of realization. I sat down slowly in my chair. I felt small. I felt old. And for the first time in my life, I felt like a fool. I had just given away my future. And I had a terrible feeling that I hadn't bought my son's salvation. I had just paid for his vacation. The house settled around me, creaking in the wind. I waited for the phone to ring. I waited for Derek to call and say the bank accepted the money and everything was okay. Hour after hour passed. The sun went down. The phone never rang. I sat there in the dark, staring at the empty spot on the table where the check had been. Listening to the silence. Knowing deep down that the silence was going to last a long, long time. 2 weeks passed, and the silence from my son was louder than the winter wind rattling my window frames. I sat by the phone every day waiting for the ring that would tell me the company was saved. I waited for Derek to tell me that my sacrifice had meant something, that the $200,000 I had scraped together from a lifetime of hard labor had kept the wolves from his door. But the phone just sat there like a piece of dead plastic. Every time I called him, it went straight to voicemail. "Hey, it is Derek and Monica. We are busy building the future. Leave a message." Building the future. That is what the voicemail said. I tried to tell myself he was just working hard. 18-hour days, meetings with bankers, lawyers. Saving a sinking ship takes time and focus. He didn't have time to call an old man. I tried to believe that. Really, I did. Because the alternative was something my mind refused to accept. But by the 14th day, the knot in my stomach was so tight I couldn't eat. I had $50 left in my checking account to last me the rest of the month. I was eating oatmeal for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I needed to know. I didn't have a computer. I didn't have a smartphone. I was a man of analog tools in a digital world. So I walked next door to the Miller house. Their son Billy was a good kid about 16 years old, always glued to his phone. He was sitting on his porch steps despite the cold, playing some game with his thumbs flying across the screen. "Hey, Billy," I said, leaning on the fence, my breath plumed in the cold air. "Can you do me a favor, son?" Billy looked up, blinking. "Sure, Mr. Cross." "What do you need?" "I need to check on Derek," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "He is not answering his phone. I think he might have posted something on that Facebook thing, seeing how the business is going. Can you look him up for me?" Billy shrugged. "Sure thing. What is his name again?" "Derek Cross." I watched Billy's fingers tap on the glass. I waited, holding my breath. I expected to see a post about long nights at the office. Maybe a plea for support. Maybe just silence. Instead, Billy frowned. "Whoa," he said. "Looks like he is doing pretty good, Mr. Cross." "What do you mean doing good?" I asked, pushing open the gate and stepping closer. Billy turned the screen toward me. The brightness of the screen hurt my eyes, but the image burned itself into my retinas instantly. It was a photo of Derek and Monica. They weren't in an office. They weren't at a bank. They were on a boat. A white yacht surrounded by water so blue it looked like paint. The sun was blazing down on them. Derek was holding a glass of champagne, wearing sunglasses that probably cost more than my first car. Monica was in a bikini, laughing with her head thrown back. I squinted at the text below the picture. My reading glasses were back in the house, but I could make out the words. "Living our best life in the Maldives. Hard work pays off. Blessed. 5-star luxury." The date of the post was yesterday. "Scroll down," I whispered. My voice sounded like it was coming from someone else, someone far away. Billy scrolled. Another photo. A dinner table laden with lobster and expensive wine. Caption. "Nothing but the best for us. We earned this." Another photo. A view from a hotel room that looked out over the ocean with a private pool on the balcony. Caption. "Serenity. Escaping the toxic energy back home." Toxic energy. That was me. I was the toxic energy. The $200,000. The money I sold my woodshop for. The money I emptied my retirement fund for. The money that was supposed to save his family from ruin. It was paying for the lobster. It was paying for the champagne. It was paying for the yacht. He didn't lose the company. He wasn't in debt. He just wanted a vacation. And he used his father's life to pay for it. "Mr. Cross, are you okay?" Billy asked, his voice sounding alarmed. "You look really pale." I didn't answer. I couldn't answer. The world was tilting sideways. The gray sky above me started to spin. I felt a sharp pain in the center of my chest, like someone had swung a sledgehammer against my sternum. "I need to go home," I gasped. I turned around, stumbling. My legs felt like they were made of lead. I heard Billy calling after me, asking if I needed help, but I just waved a hand blindly behind me. I needed to get inside. I needed to sit down. I made it through my front door, but I didn't make it to the chair. The pain exploded. It radiated down my left arm and up into my jaw. It felt like a giant hand was crushing my heart, squeezing the life out of it. My knees gave way and I hit the floor hard. The carpet smelled of dust and old wool. I lay there gasping for air. My vision was tunneling, turning gray at the edges. I was dying. I knew it. This was it. 76 years, and it ends on the floor of an empty house betrayed by my own blood. My phone was in my pocket. My old flip phone. I managed to pull it out with trembling fingers. My vision was blurry, but I could feel the buttons. I pressed speed dial 1. Derek. It rang. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3 rings. "Pick up," I prayed. "Please pick up. Just tell me it is a mistake. Tell me the photos are old. Tell me you didn't do this to me. Click. Hey, it is Derek and Monica. We are busy building the future. Leave a message. The voicemail. Again. The cheerful, arrogant voice of the son Shon who had left me to die. I let the phone drop from my ear. Tears leaked from my eyes, hot and stinging. Not tears of pain, tears of absolute heartbreak. A parent can survive a lot of things. Hunger, cold, illness. But the knowledge that your child views you as nothing more than a bank account, to be drained and discarded, that is a wound that kills you before your heart stops beating. I lay there listening to the beep of the voicemail, recording the sound of my ragged breathing. I didn't want to die like this. Alone. Unloved. A fool. My thumb hovered over the red button to end the call. I was ready to let go, to just close my eyes and let the darkness take me. But then my mind flashed back to the diner, to the stranger with the messy hair and the desperate eyes, to the young man who had looked at me with respect, who had listened to me. I had saved his number. I didn't know why. Maybe just to prove to myself that I still mattered to someone. I scrolled down the contacts list. My thumb felt heavy and clumsy. Leo Vance. I pressed the green button. It rang once. I expected a voicemail. I expected him to be busy. I expected him to have forgotten who I was. Harlan. The voice was loud, clear, and urgent. He picked up on the first ring. Harlan, is that you? I was just thinking about you. I ran the numbers on the wind shear and… Leo, I whispered. The word came out as a croak. A wet, rattling sound. Harlan. Leo's tone changed instantly. The excitement vanished, replaced by sharp concern. What is wrong? You sound bad. Chest, I gasped. Pain. Alone. Where are you, Harlan? Tell me where you are right now. Home, I said. The darkness was closing in now. The gray tunnel was becoming a pinhole. Hang on. Do not close your eyes, Harlan. Do you hear me? Stay with me. I am tracking your location. I am calling 911 on the other line. Keep talking to me. Tell me about the steel. Tell me about the Sears Tower. Just keep talking. I can't, I whispered. Tired. No, you are not tired. You are Harlan Cross. You are the toughest son of a gun I met in a Denny's. You don't get to quit on me now. I still owe you a bottle of wine. Harlan. Harlan, answer me. I could hear the panic in his voice. Genuine panic. Not the fake concern of a son trying to get money, but the real fear of a man losing a father. The phone slipped from my fingers. The last thing I heard before the darkness swallowed me whole wasn't my son's voice. It was the voice of a stranger screaming my name, telling me to fight, telling me I wasn't alone. And for the first time in 2 weeks, I believed it. The next time I opened my eyes, the world was white. Blindingly, clinically white. There was a rhythmic beeping sound somewhere to my left, a steady electronic pulse that seemed to be the only thing tethering me to the earth. My chest felt heavy like someone had parked a pickup truck on my sternum, but the sharp, crushing pain was gone, replaced by a dull, aching bruise. I blinked, trying to clear the fog from my brain. I expected to see the peeling wallpaper of my bedroom ceiling. I expected to see the water stain that looked like a map of Florida. Instead, I saw acoustic tiles and a sleek flat-screen television mounted on the wall. I tried to move my arm, but it was heavy. There were tubes running into the back of my hand. You are awake, the voice came from the corner of the room. It wasn't the voice of a nurse, and it certainly wasn't the voice of my son Derek. I turned my head slowly. Sitting in an uncomfortable hospital chair, still wearing the same crumpled suit from the diner, was Leo. He looked terrible. He had dark circles under his eyes and a layer of stubble on his chin that hadn't been there when I met him. He was holding a cup of hospital coffee, staring at me with an intensity that made me want to sit up straight. "You gave me a heart attack," Harlan, Leo said, a small, tired smile playing on his lips. "Figuratively speaking, of course. You are the one who actually had the cardiac event." I tried to speak, but my throat was dry as sandpaper. Leo was at my side in an instant, holding a cup of water with a straw to my lips. Slowly he said, "Don't rush it." I drank. The water tasted like heaven. How I croaked. "I tracked your phone," Leo said, sitting back down on the edge of the bed. "Thank God you have an old GPS-enabled flip phone. The signal was strong. When you stopped talking, I didn't wait for the ambulance. I drove to your address. I broke the door down, Harlan. I hope you don't mind, but you owe me a new deadbolt." I closed my eyes, remembering the pain, remembering the floor, remembering the voicemail. "Derek," I whispered. "Did he come?" Silence. The kind of heavy, suffocating silence that tells you everything you don't want to hear. I opened my eyes and looked at Leo. He was looking down at his hands. "No, Harlan," Leo said softly. "He didn't come." "Did you call him?" I asked, even though I knew the answer. "I called him 10 times, Leo said, his voice hardening. "I called his wife. I even called his office number." Monica picked up once. She said they were on a private boat excursion and couldn't be disturbed by spam calls. She thought I was a bill collector, Harlan. She blocked my number. A tear, hot and humiliating, slid down my temple into my ear. I turned my face away, staring at the white wall. My son was drinking champagne on a yacht, bought with my life savings, while a stranger was breaking down my door to save my life. "I paid for the room," Leo continued, his voice gentle again. "You are in the VIP wing at Northwestern Memorial. Best cardiologists in the state. They put 2 stents in. They said if I had been 5 minutes later, you wouldn't be here." "Why?" I asked, turning back to look at him. "Why did you do all this?" "We shared 1 bottle of wine." "You don't owe me anything." Leo reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a piece of paper. It was the napkin. The greasy, wrinkled napkin from Denny's where I had sketched the wind shear solution. "You are wrong," Leo said. "I owe you everything." He unfolded the napkin, smoothing it out on the hospital blanket. "I took this to the board meeting on Monday morning," Leo said. "The engineers laughed at first. They said it was too simple. They said a 76-year-old retired foreman couldn't possibly outsmart their simulation software. But then I made them run the numbers." He leaned in, his eyes shining. "It worked, Harlan. The floating counterbalance, the pivot bearings. It didn't just work, it increased the structural integrity by 40% and saved us $12 million in materials. The board reinstated me as CEO, effective immediately. The stock jumped 8 points yesterday." He took a deep breath. "You saved my company, Harlan. You saved my father's legacy. So don't you dare ask me why I am paying for a hospital room. As far as I am concerned, I am still underpaying you. I stayed in the hospital for 3 more days." Leo didn't leave. He set up a laptop on the tray table and ran a multi-billion-dollar corporation from my bedside. He fetched me ice chips. He argued with the nurses when they were late with my medication. He told me stories about his dad, a man who sounded a lot like me, tough but fair. When it was time to be discharged, I started to panic. I thought about my cold, empty house. I thought about the stairs I would have to climb. I thought about the silence waiting for me. "Call me a cab," I told Leo as I buttoned my shirt. My hands were shaking. "You are not taking a cab," Leo said, not looking up from his phone. "My driver is downstairs." "Look, kid," I said, snapping a little because I was scared. "I appreciate everything, really. But I am not a charity case. I am going home." "You are going home," Leo agreed. "Just not to that house. I had my security team go by your place, Harlan. There is no food in the fridge. The heating unit is failing, and quite frankly, if you go back there alone, you will be dead in a month from depression, if not from another heart attack. He stood up and looked me in the eye. You are coming with me. I opened my mouth to argue, but he cut me off. It is not charity, he said firmly. It is a job offer. I paused. A job. I need a senior technical advisor, Leo said. Someone who isn't afraid to tell me when I am being an idiot. Someone who knows steel and concrete better than they know spreadsheets. I want you to come live at my estate. There is a guest house fully accessible, no stairs. I will pay you a salary. We will look over blueprints together. You will consult on the new projects. He stepped closer. Please, Harlan. I have a 20,000 square foot house and nobody to talk to. I have a fleet of cars and nobody to ride with. Don't make me eat dinner alone anymore. I looked at this young man, this billionaire who had everything and nothing. I saw the loneliness in his eyes that mirrored my own. I am expensive, I grumbled, trying to hide the tremble in my voice, and I snore. Leo grinned a genuine boyish grin. I can afford expensive, and the guest house has soundproof walls. So I went. Living with Leo was like stepping into a different universe. His estate was in Lake Forest, a sprawling mansion overlooking the lake. My guest house was bigger than any home I had ever owned. But true to his word, Leo didn't let me rot there. Every morning at 8 sharp, he would knock on my door with 2 travel mugs of coffee. We would walk the grounds discussing the latest projects. He dragged me to job sites. At first, the site managers looked at me with skepticism. Who was this old man in a flannel shirt walking next to the CEO? But then I would point out a welding flaw on a beam 30 feet up or suggest a better way to route the HVAC ducts to save headroom, and they stopped staring. They started listening. I felt useful again. My back straightened. The color returned to my cheeks. One evening, about a month after I moved in, we were sitting on the main terrace watching the sun set over the water. We had just finished a steak dinner that Leo had grilled himself. He wasn't a bad cook, though he used too much fancy seasoning. Harlan, Leo said, staring out at the horizon. I have been thinking. About what I asked, swirling my wine glass. 1996 Cabernet this time. About family, Leo said. He turned to look at me. His face was serious, stripped of his usual corporate confidence. My dad always wanted me to have a partner, he said. Not just in business, but in life. Someone to watch my back. I never had brothers or sisters. And you, well, your family made their choice. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a thick envelope. I had my lawyers draw this up, he said, sliding it across the glass table. I opened it. It was a legal document, an adult adoption petition, and a modification to his will. I am 34 years old, Leo said. I don't need a babysitter, but I need a father, Harlan. And I think you need a son who actually gives a damn about you. I want to make it official. I want you to be my family. Legally, publicly, in every way that matters. I stared at the paper. The letters blurred. You want to adopt an old man? I asked, my voice thick. People will think you are crazy. Let them think what they want, Leo said fiercely. You saved my life in that diner just as much as I saved yours. You gave me the confidence to fight for my legacy. You are the only father figure I have left. I looked at him. I saw the love there, the respect, the loyalty that my biological son had never shown me. I picked up the pen. My hand didn't shake this time. I will sign it, I said. On one condition. Anything, Leo said. Nobody knows, I said. Not yet. Leo frowned. Why? I want to tell the world. I want to put your name on the building. No, I said. my voice turning cold as I thought of the yacht in the Maldives. Derek and Monica, they think I am a broke, pathetic old man. They think I am rotting in that house or dead. Let them think that. I leaned forward, my eyes locking with Leo's. If they find out I am rich, if they find out I am connected to you, they will come back. They will swarm like vultures. I want to see if they ever come back just for me. I want to test them, Leo, one last time. And if they fail... I didn't finish the sentence. I didn't have to. Leo understood. A dark look of understanding crossed his face. He nodded slowly. "Okay, Dad," he said. The word hung in the air, heavy and sweet. "We keep it a secret. We will be the shadow family. And when the time is right, we will step into the light." I signed the paper. Harlan Cross, the structural steel foreman, died in that moment. And Harlan Cross, the shadow advisor, the secret father of a billionaire, was born. We shook hands. His grip was strong, warm, and real. "Now," I said, capping the pen, "pour me another glass of that fancy wine. We have blueprints to review for the new stadium project. I think your architects are underestimating the wind load on the south canopy." Leo laughed. "Yes, sir." "Right away, sir." We sat there under the stars, plotting, building, and waiting. Waiting for the day my past would come knocking and finding out that the door was no longer made of rotting wood, but of solid, impenetrable steel. 5 years is a long time if you are waiting to die, but it is the blink of an eye when you are finally learning how to live. Time became a blur of steel and glass, of blueprints and boardrooms. In the eyes of the world, I was still Harlan Cross, the retired foreman who drove a rusted truck and lived in a drafty house on the wrong side of town. But in the halls of Vesper Group, I had become a legend. They called me the Old Man. At first it was whispered with a sneer by the young Ivy League architects in their slim-fit suits. They looked at my flannel shirts and my work boots, and they wondered why the CEO was letting a geriatric blue-collar worker sit at the head of the table. But then I would speak. I would point a calloused finger at a rendering and tell them exactly why their cantilevered balcony would collapse under the weight of a heavy snow. I would show them how to save 3 weeks on a pouring schedule just by rearranging the crane logistics. Slowly, the sneers turned into nods, and the nods turned into reverence. I wasn't just the old man anymore. I was the oracle. Young engineers would wait outside my office door, hoping for 5 minutes of my time just to check their math. I was having the time of my life. For 40 years, I had built other people's dreams while standing in the mud. Now I was sketching the skyline from the penthouse. Leo and I became inseparable. We were an odd couple, to be sure. A 34-year-old tech billionaire and a 76-year-old steelworker. On weekends, we would fly to Pebble Beach to play golf. I had never held a golf club in my life, but Leo was patient. He taught me how to swing, and I taught him how to read the wind. We went fishing in Alaska, where I caught a salmon bigger than my leg, and Leo laughed until he fell out of the boat. We made money too. Serious money. Leo insisted on giving me stock options and performance bonuses. My bank account, which had once hovered near zero, now had more zeros than I knew what to do with. I hired a wealth manager, a quiet woman named Elena, who looked at my portfolio and asked me why I was still driving a 15-year-old Ford. I told her it was camouflage, and it was. Because while I was rising, my son Derek was falling, and I needed him to think I was still at the bottom. I kept the old house. I paid a neighbor to mow the lawn and keep the lights on a timer. I would go there once a week to collect the mail and check the answering machine, and the messages on that machine told a tragic story of a slow-motion train wreck. The $200,000 I had given. Derek burned up in less than a year. The Maldives trip was just the beginning. Then came the luxury lease on a Mercedes he couldn't afford. Then the private school tuition for kids he never spent time with. Then the risky investments in cryptocurrency that vanished overnight. Derek was drowning, but he refused to stop swimming like a shark. He kept up the appearance of a high-flying developer. He posted photos of expensive dinners while his credit cards were being declined. He wore designer suits to meetings where he begged for extensions on his loans. And he called me. Oh, how he called me. Dad, it is Derek just checking in. Hey, listen, the market is a little tight right now. Do you think you could spot me $500? Just for groceries, Dad. I will pay you back next week. $500. The man who had taken my life savings was now asking for grocery money. I would pick up the phone, my voice deliberately shaky and old. I can't, son, I would say. I am on a fixed income. Social Security barely covers the heat. I am eating ramen noodles here, Derek. You are useless, Dad. He would snap, his facade cracking for a second. Absolutely useless. Then he would hang up, and I would drive back to Leo's estate, eat a steak dinner prepared by a private chef, and sleep on sheets made of Egyptian cotton. It was petty, perhaps, but every time he called me useless, I added another $1,000 to the trust fund I was secretly setting up for his children. My grandkids. They wouldn't suffer for their father's sins, but Derek had to learn the hard way. Year 3 was the hardest. Monica started calling. She didn't ask for money directly. She was too proud for that. Instead, she would complain. Harlan, it is Monica. I just don't know what we are going to do. Derek is so stressed. So, his blood pressure is up. We might have to sell the lake house. It is just so unfair, Harlan. We are good people. We deserve better. I listened to her whine about losing a vacation home while I remembered the night I lay on the floor thinking I was dying. Life is hard, Monica, I would say. Maybe Derek should get a job. I heard the Amazon warehouse is hiring. She gasped. My husband is a CEO, Harlan. He doesn't pack boxes. Then I guess he will be a hungry CEO, I replied, and hung up. By the 5th year, the silence between the two worlds was almost absolute. I was living a double life. By day, I was helping Leo plan the largest sustainable skyscraper in Chicago history. By night, I was the poor old hermit father that Derek was ashamed to mention. Leo wanted to end it. He hated seeing them treat me like dirt. Let's just buy his debt, Dad, Leo said one night as we sat by the fire. I can buy the mortgage on his house. I can own him. Then we can walk in there and evict him. It would be poetic. No, I said, staring into the flames. Not yet. He needs to hit rock bottom, real rock bottom. If we bail him out now, or if we punish him now, he will just play the victim. He needs to expose himself completely. And then the opportunity arrived in a cream-colored envelope. It was a Thursday in November, almost exactly 5 years since that Thanksgiving dinner. I stopped by the old house to check the mail. Amidst the flyers for hearing aids and reverse mortgages, there was a heavy, stiff envelope with calligraphy on the front. Mr. Harlan Cross. I opened it. It was an invitation. Sarah, my daughter. The quiet, sweet girl who had always been too afraid of her brother to stand up for me. She was getting married. Sarah Cross and Michael Sterling invite you to celebrate their union. I looked at the date. 3 weeks from now. I looked at the venue. The Grand View Resort on Lake Michigan. One of the most expensive venues in the state. I knew immediately that Sarah couldn't afford this. She was a kindergarten teacher. Michael was a mechanic. Good, honest jobs, but not Grand View Resort jobs. This had Derek written all over it. I pulled out my phone and called Sarah. Dad, she answered, and I could hear the hesitation in her voice. Did you get the invite? I did, sweetheart, I said warmly. It looks fancy. It is Derek's idea, she admitted. He insisted on planning it, Dad. He said he wanted to give me a dream wedding. He is paying for everything. He said it is going to be the social event of the season. He invited all these investors and business partners. He says it is a networking opportunity. I closed my eyes. Of course. Derek wasn't throwing a wedding for his sister. He was throwing a networking event for himself. He was going to use Sarah's special day to try and scam new investors to save his sinking ship. He was going to turn a sacrament into a sales pitch. "Are you okay with that, Sarah?" I asked. "Not really," she whispered. "I just wanted a backyard barbecue. But, you know Derek. He steamrolls everything. And Monica has taken over the guest list. Dad, they are going to let you come, right?" I smiled a cold, sharp smile that nobody could see. "Oh, I am coming, Sarah," I said. I wouldn't miss it for the world. I drove back to the estate, driving a little faster than usual. I found Leo in his home office surrounded by screens. "Clear your schedule for the third weekend of November," I told him, tossing the invitation onto his desk. "What is this?" Leo asked, picking up the card. "It is the end game," I said. "My daughter is getting married. Derek is hosting, and he thinks he is going to use this wedding to save his reputation." Leo looked at the invitation, then looked at me. A slow grin spread across his face. "Do I get a +1?" he asked. "You are the +1," I said. "But we are going to need to do some shopping. Derek wants me to look like a poor relative so I don't embarrass him. I intend to give him exactly what he wants, until I give him exactly what he deserves." Leo spun his chair around, his eyes dancing with excitement. "I will call the helicopter pilot," Leo said. "We are going to make an entrance, Dad." I looked out the window at the gray Chicago sky. The storm had been brewing for 5 years, and finally it was about to break. Derek Cross thought he was hosting a wedding. He didn't know he was hosting his own funeral. The day Monica came to deliver the invitation, I made sure the stage was set perfectly. I drove my rusted Ford truck out of the climate-controlled garage at Leo's estate and parked it crookedly in the driveway of my old house. Inside, I scattered a few unpaid bills on the kitchen table and turned the thermostat down until the air had that damp chill of poverty. I swapped my cashmere sweater for a flannel shirt with a fraying collar and put on my old work boots, the ones with the cracked leather. I sat at the kitchen table nursing a cup of instant coffee, waiting for the show to begin. At 2 p.m, a Porsche SUV pulled up to the curb. It was shiny black and aggressive-looking, completely out of place on my modest street. I watched through the curtain as Monica stepped out. She was wearing oversized sunglasses and a coat that looked like it was made of baby alpaca. She hesitated at the edge of the driveway, looking at the cracked concrete like it might infect her shoes if she stepped on it wrong. She knocked on the door. 3 sharp raps, the sound of authority. I shuffled to the door, making sure to drag my left leg a little. I opened it and blinked at her, feigning surprise. "Monica," I said, my voice rusty. "This is a surprise." "Hello, Harlan," she said. She didn't smile. She didn't step in to hug me. She just stood on the porch, clutching her designer bag like a shield. "Aren't you going to invite me in?" I stepped back. "Come in. Excuse the mess. I haven't been feeling up to cleaning lately." She walked in and immediately wrinkled her nose. The house smelled of dust and old paper because nobody had lived there for 5 years, but to her it probably smelled like failure. She scanned the living room, her eyes lingering on the faded recliner and the empty walls. "It is freezing in here, Harlan," she said, pulling her coat tighter. "Do you need money for the heat?" I almost laughed. I had enough money in my pocket to buy the heating company. But I just shook my head. "I am fine," I said. "I like the cold. Keeps the mind sharp." She didn't sit down. She stood in the center of the kitchen, refusing to touch anything. She reached into her bag and pulled out a heavy cream-colored envelope. "We brought you this," she said, handing it to me. "Sarah really wanted to bring it herself, but she is busy with the fittings. Weddings are so stressful, you know." I took the envelope. I already knew what was inside, but I opened it anyway. acting as if my hands were trembling with age. "A wedding," I said softly. "My little Sarah." "Yes." "Well, that is why I am here," Monica said, cutting off my moment of sentimentality. "We need to talk about the logistics. Harlan, this isn't going to be a backyard potluck. Derek has pulled out all the stops. The venue is the Grand View Resort. The catering is by a Michelin star chef. The guest list includes some of the most powerful people in Chicago." She took a step closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that made my skin crawl. "We have a huge opportunity, Harlan. Derek has been working for months to secure a meeting with the CEO of Vesper Group. You know who that is, right? The tech giant. The infrastructure king." I nodded slowly, keeping my face blank. "I believe I have heard the name," I said. "Well," Monica continued, her eyes gleaming with greed, "he is coming." He accepted the invitation. We don't know why exactly. Maybe he knows someone on the board, but this is Derek's chance. If he can get 5 minutes with the CEO, he can save our company. He can get the funding we need to get back on top. "So I am finally going to see Derek succeed," I said. "That is good." "Yes, it is good," Monica snapped. "But that brings us to the problem." "Problem?" I asked, looking up from the invitation. "You," Monica said. She said it without blinking. Just one word thrown like a stone. "Me." "Look at you, Harlan," Monica said, gesturing vaguely at my outfit. "You look tired. You look like you have given up. And that is fine for you. But for us, for the image we are trying to project, it is a disaster. We can't have the CEO of Vesper Group thinking Derek comes from this." She waved a hand around my kitchen. "She thinks Derek came from poverty. She doesn't know that this house, this blue-collar life, paid for Derek's college, paid for his first car, paid for the down payment on their first house. She thinks dignity is something you buy at a boutique." "So what are you asking, Monica?" I asked, my voice hardening just a fraction. "Do you want me to stay home?" "No," she sighed, sounding annoyed that I was making this difficult. "Sarah would throw a fit if you weren't there. She is emotional like that. You can come. But we have ground rules. Rules for a father attending his daughter's wedding." "Number 1," she said, ticking off a finger. "You will wear a suit that we provide. We rented one for you. It is a standard tuxedo, nothing fancy. Do not wear those boots. Number 2, you will arrive through the side entrance. We don't want you in the main receiving line when the VIP guests are arriving. It creates a bottleneck. And number 3, she said, pausing for effect. And this is the most important one, Harlan. You are not to introduce yourself as Derek and Sarah's father." The silence in the kitchen was absolute. I could hear the refrigerator humming. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. "Excuse me," I said quietly. "It is just for the night," Monica said quickly, as if she was explaining something to a child. "Look, if people know you are Derek's father, they will judge him. They will wonder why his father is, well, like this. It raises questions about his background, his pedigree. We can't afford questions right now." "So who am I?" I asked. "You are a distant relative," she said. "Uncle Harlan. From the country. A great uncle, maybe. Someone we are kind enough to invite out of charity. You will sit at table 19. It is in the back near the service doors. It is quiet there. You will be comfortable. Table 19. The table for the unwanted. And if someone asks me directly, I asked." "Just smile and nod," Monica said. "Keep it vague. Say you are retired. Say you used to farm. Don't talk about construction. Don't talk about steel. And for God's sake, Harlan, do not try to approach the CEO of Vesper. Do not try to shake his hand. Do not look at him. Security will be tight, and we don't want a scene." I looked at her. Really looked at her. Beneath the expensive makeup and the designer clothes, I saw a woman who was terrified. She was terrified of being poor. She was terrified of being ordinary. And she was willing to erase her husband's history to protect her own fragile ego. She was asking me to deny my own existence, to deny the blood in my veins, to sit in the shadows of the greatest day of my daughter's life so that she and Derek could play pretend with a billionaire. The irony was so rich I could taste it. She was terrified I would embarrass her in front of the CEO of Vesper. She didn't know that the CEO of Vesper ate breakfast with me every morning. She didn't know that the man she was trying to impress was the man who called me Dad. I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. It was the calm of a chess player who sees checkmate in 3 moves while his opponent is still focused on a pawn. "Okay, Monica," I said. She blinked, surprised by my surrender. "Really? You agree?" "I agree," I said, folding the invitation carefully and placing it on the table. "I want Sarah to be happy, and I want Derek to succeed. If denying who I am will help him close this deal, then I will do it. I will be Uncle Harlan from the country. I will sit at table 19, and I won't say a word to your VIP guest." Monica let out a breath she had been holding. Her shoulders relaxed. "Thank you, Harlan," she said. "I knew you would understand eventually. It is for the best." "Really?" She reached into her purse and pulled out a garment bag ticket. "Here is the rental ticket for the tuxedo. Pick it up on Friday. And Harlan, please shower before you come." She turned on her heel and walked out. I watched her get back into her Porsche. I watched her drive away, leaving me alone in the house she despised. I waited until the taillights disappeared. Then I picked up my phone and dialed Leo. "Dad." Leo answered. "How did it go? Did she invite you?" "Oh, I am invited," I said, walking over to the sink to pour out the terrible instant coffee. "But there are conditions. Apparently, I am not allowed to be Sarah's father. I am a distant uncle from the farm, and I am strictly forbidden from talking to you." Leo laughed, a low, dangerous laugh. "She actually said that." "She did," I said. "She said my presence would ruin the image they are trying to project to the CEO of Vesper." "That is incredible," Leo said. "I almost feel bad for them." "Almost." "Don't," I said. "They made their choice. Now, Leo, I need you to do something for me." "Name it." "I need you to call your tailor. The Italian one. I am not wearing a rental tuxedo. If I am going to be a distant relative, I am going to be the best-dressed distant relative in that room. And I want you to make sure your security team knows the plan." "Consider it done," Leo said. "Are you okay, Dad?" I looked around the empty kitchen. I looked at the spot where Monica had stood, where she had looked at me with pure, unadulterated shame. "I am better than okay, Leo," I said. "I am ready." I locked the door of the old house behind me. I didn't know it then, but that was the last time I would ever step foot in it as a poor man. The next time Derek and Monica saw me, the masquerade would be over, and the truth was going to hit them harder than a wrecking ball. The rehearsal dinner was held at a steakhouse downtown, the kind of place where the lighting was so dim you needed a flashlight to read the menu, and the waiters looked down on you if you didn't order a bottle of wine that cost more than a car payment. I walked in wearing the ill-fitting rental suit Monica had selected for me. The fabric scratched against my neck, and the pants were hemmed too short, exposing my socks every time I sat down. I felt like a clown in a circus designed solely to humiliate me. The room was buzzing with the chatter of Chicago's elite. Lawyers, bankers, real estate developers, people who measured their self-worth by the size of their portfolios. In the center of it all, holding court like a king, was my son Derek. He was holding a glass of scotch in one hand and gesturing wildly with the other, surrounded by a group of sycophants who were hanging on his every word. I stood in the shadows near the coat check, just as Monica had instructed. I watched my son lie. "This Vesper deal is basically done," Derek boasted, his voice carrying over the low hum of jazz music. I have been talking directly with their top brass. The CEO has a personal interest in our vision. We are talking about a $50 million injection by the end of the quarter. Once that ink is dry, gentlemen, we are going to reshape the skyline. I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing or crying. I wasn't sure which. The only person at Vesper Group who had seen Derek's proposal was me, and I had thrown it in the shredder 2 weeks ago because his structural calculations were dangerous and his financial projections were borderline fraudulent. The CEO he claimed to be talking to was currently sitting in my guest house, probably eating pizza and playing video games. But Derek didn't know that. He was high on his own fantasy, spinning a web of lies to catch desperate investors. I scanned the room looking for the only person who mattered. Sarah. I found her sitting alone at a table near the window. She looked beautiful in her cream-colored dress, but her shoulders were slumped, and she was staring into her water glass with a look of profound sadness. Her fiancé Michael, a good man with grease-stained hands and a heart of gold, looked equally uncomfortable sitting next to her, pulling at his collar. I started to walk toward them. I just wanted to hug my daughter. I wanted to tell her that no matter what happened tomorrow, I loved her. I wanted to slip her a check I had written earlier, a check for $50,000 drawn from my private account, just to help them start their life. I made it halfway across the room before a hand clamped onto my arm. It was Monica. Her nails dug into my bicep through the cheap fabric of my suit. "Where do you think you are going?" "Uncle Harlan," she hissed, her voice low and venomous. "I just want to say hello to Sarah," I said, trying to pull my arm away. "Sarah is busy," Monica snapped. "She is mentally preparing for the big day. She doesn't need you dragging her down with your sentimental weepiness. And look at you, that tie is crooked. You look like you slept in that suit." She steered me forcibly away from the main tables, pushing me toward the back of the room near the swinging kitchen doors. "This is your seat," she said, pointing to a low table surrounded by high chairs. I looked at the table. There were 4 toddlers throwing bread rolls at each other, and a tired-looking nanny who was trying to keep them from screaming. "You want me to sit at the children's table?" I asked, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. "It is the only spot left," Monica said with a shrug. "Besides, you will fit right in. Old people and children have a lot in common. You both need help cutting your food, and you both make a mess. Just sit down, Harlan. Eat your chicken fingers and don't make a scene." She turned her back on me and walked away, weighing her hips as she returned to the VIP section. I sat down. The chair was too small. My knees hit the table. The nanny looked at me with pity. "Sorry," she whispered. "Family can be tough." "You have no idea," I muttered. I sat there for an hour, picking at a plate of cold fried chicken, while watching my son toast to his own brilliance across the room. I watched him hug strangers. I watched him laugh with men he owed money to. I watched him ignore his sister. And not once, not a single time did he look in my direction. The noise and the humiliation became suffocating. I needed air. I needed a moment of silence to compose myself before I did something regretful like flipping the table and walking out. I stood up and made my way to the restrooms located down a long corridor away from the main dining hall. I pushed open the heavy oak door of the men's room. It was empty, mercifully quiet. I walked over to the sink and splashed cold water on my face, staring at my reflection in the mirror. The eyes staring back at me were tired, but they were sharp. They were the eyes of a man who was done being a victim. I was drying my hands when the door opened. 2 men walked in, laughing loudly. I froze. One of the voices was unmistakably Derek. I instinctively stepped back into one of the stalls and locked the door. I don't know why. Maybe I wasn't ready to face him. Maybe I wanted to hear what he said when he thought I wasn't listening. "I am telling you, Mark. It is a slam dunk," Derek was saying. The water ran as he washed his hands. "Once the Vesper money hits the account, I am clearing out all the bad debt. The house, the cars, everything gets refinanced. And what about the old man? The other voice asked. Mark, I assumed. One of his drinking buddies. I saw him sitting back there with the kids. He looks like a corpse that forgot to fall down. Derek laughed. A cruel, hollow sound that echoed off the tiled walls. Yeah, well, that is a problem that is about to solve itself. What do you mean? Mark asked. After the wedding, I am moving him, Derek said. Monica found this place out in the sticks. Shady Acres or something. It is a state-run facility. Incredibly cheap. Basically a warehouse for the indigent. I stopped breathing. My hand gripped the metal latch of the stall door so hard my knuckles turned white. Can you do that? Mark asked. Doesn't he have rights? He signed power of attorney over to me 3 years ago when he had that scare with his hip. Derek lied smoothly. He is incompetent, Mark. Look at him. He gave me his life savings because he is senile. He doesn't know what day it is. I will tell him it is a retirement resort. By the time he realizes it is a hellhole with rats in the walls, I will have sold his house and the land. But he is your dad, Derek, Mark said, sounding slightly uncomfortable. He is a burden, Derek snapped. He has been a weight around my neck my whole life, always preaching about hard work and honesty. Look where honesty got him. Eating chicken fingers at a kid's table while I am about to close a $50 million deal. No, Mark. It is time to cut the dead weight. Monday morning, the van comes to pick him up. The door opened and closed. They were gone. I stood in the stall for a long time. The silence of the bathroom was deafening. Shady Acres, a state-run facility, rats in the walls. That was his plan. That was my reward for raising him, for sacrificing my sweat and my health to give him a better life. He wasn't just ashamed of me. He was planning to discard me like a bag of trash. He was going to strip me of my last shred of dignity and lock me away so he could steal the last few pennies I had left in my property. A cold calm settled over me. It was the calm of the executioner. I had come to this wedding thinking maybe I would just reveal myself and walk away. Maybe I would just show them I was successful and leave them to their regret. But this was different. This was war. Derek didn't just deserve to fail. He deserved to be obliterated. I unlocked the stall door and walked out. I looked at myself in the mirror one last time. The sad, tired old man was gone. The uncle from the farm was gone. I walked back out into the dining room. I didn't return to the kids' table. I walked straight to the exit. I passed Monica, who glared at me, but I didn't even blink. I stepped out into the cool night air. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out. A text message from Leo. The helicopter is prepped. The suit is ready. I just got the final guest list for tomorrow. Derek put you down as Harlan Nobody. Don't worry, Dad. Tomorrow everyone is going to know exactly who you are. Are you ready? I looked up at the moon hanging over the Chicago skyline. I typed back 2 words. Burn him. I got into my truck and drove away from the restaurant. I didn't go back to the old house. I drove straight to the airfield where Leo's private chopper was waiting. The rehearsal was over. Tomorrow was opening night, and I was going to bring the house down. The morning of the wedding dawned with a sky so blue it felt like an insult. The sun glittered off the waters of Lake Michigan, turning the Grand View Resort into a palace of light and glass. It was the kind of day a father dreams of for his daughter. The kind of day where you stand tall and proud and give away the piece of your heart you have protected since birth. But I wasn't standing tall. I was standing in the bathroom of a gas station 3 miles down the road, struggling with the zipper of a rental tuxedo that smelled of stale cigarettes and other people's sweat. Monica had sent the garment bag over with a note attached that simply said, "Do not be late, and do not forget your role." My role. Uncle Harlan. The poor relation. The embarrassment. I looked at myself in the cracked mirror. The suit was a size too big in the shoulders and a size too small in the waist. The fabric was cheap polyester that shone under the fluorescent lights. I looked exactly like what they wanted me to be. A man who had failed at life. A man who didn't belong. I adjusted the bow tie, which was a clip-on, because apparently they didn't trust me to tie a real one. I took a deep breath, staring into my own eyes. "Showtime, Harlan," I whispered to myself. "Just get through the ceremony for Sarah. The rest is for Leo." I drove my rusted truck to the resort. The parking attendants looked at my vehicle with open disdain. One of them, a teenager with acne and a uniform that cost more than my weekly grocery bill, tried to wave me toward the service entrance. "Deliveries are round the back, old man," he shouted over the noise of the arriving guests. "I am a guest," I said, rolling down the window. He looked at the truck. He looked at my suit. He laughed. "Right, and I am the president. Just park it round back in the staff lot. We can't have this rust bucket out front." I didn't argue. It fit the narrative perfectly. I parked between a catering van and a dumpster. As I walked toward the manicured lawn where the ceremony was to be held, I felt a strange sense of detachment. It was as if I was a ghost haunting my own life. The lawn was filled with white folding chairs and elaborate floral arrangements. There were people everywhere. Men in Italian silk suits, women in designer gowns. I recognized a few faces from the business pages of the newspaper. These were the sharks Derek was trying to swim with. They looked bored, checking their watches and their phones, waiting for the networking to begin. I saw Sarah near the gazebo. She looked breathtaking. Her dress was a cloud of white lace, and for a second, I saw the little girl who used to dance on my work boots in the kitchen. My heart swelled. I started to walk toward her. The photographer was arranging the bridal party. Derek was there looking puffed up and important. Monica was barking orders at the bridesmaids. I stepped onto the grass. Sarah saw me. Her face lit up. "Dad," she called out. She took a step toward me, but before she could reach me, Monica intercepted her. She moved fast for a woman in 4-inch heels. She planted herself between me and my daughter, blocking my path. "You made it," Monica said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "And you are wearing the suit." "Good." She turned to the photographer. "Okay, everyone, gather round for the family portrait. Derek, come stand next to Sarah. Parents on the left." I stepped forward, assuming my place. I was the father of the bride. It was my right. It was my duty. Monica's hand shot out, pushing against my chest. It wasn't a gentle nudge. It was a shove. "Not you, Harlan," she hissed under her breath so the photographer wouldn't hear. "You are stepping on the train of the dress. You are ruining the aesthetic." I looked down. I was 3 feet away from the dress. "I just want a picture with my daughter," I said quietly. "And you will get one later," Monica said, her eyes flashing. "Candid shots. At the reception. Right now, we need the core team, the image of success. Look at that suit, Harlan. It catches the light all wrong. You look like a waiter. Just step back. Please. For Sarah. For Sarah." That was the weapon she always used. I looked at Sarah. She was biting her lip, looking from me to Monica. She looked terrified. If I made a scene now, if I fought for my spot, I would ruin her moment. I would be the selfish old man causing drama. I took a step back, then another. "That is better," Monica said, turning her dazzling smile back to the camera. "Okay, everyone, big smiles. Success on 3. I watched from the sidelines, standing next to a bush as the flashbulbs popped. I watched my son put his arm around his wife and his sister, presenting a united front of prosperity. They looked perfect. They looked rich. And they looked like strangers. Then came the procession. The music started. The string quartet began to play. I walked to the staging area where Sarah was waiting. This was it. The walk down the aisle. The one thing nobody could take from me. I had practiced this moment in my head for 30 years. Sarah looked at me, tears in her eyes. "Dad," she whispered, "you look nice." "I look like a scarecrow, sweetheart," I said, smiling. "But you look like a princess, ready to go." She nodded, taking a deep breath. She reached for my arm. Suddenly, a hand clamped down on my shoulder. I got this, old man. It was Derek. He had appeared out of nowhere. He was wearing a tuxedo that was tailored to within an inch of its life. He smelled of expensive cologne and scotch. "What are you doing, Derek?" I asked, my voice low. "I am walking her down," Derek said, stepping in front of me. "We have some very important investors in the front row, Dad. They need to see a strong male figure leading the family. No offense, but you walking with a limp. It projects weakness. We need to project strength." I looked at him. I looked at the son I had carried on my shoulders when he was too tired to walk. "This is my privilege, Derek," I said, my voice trembling. "Not yours." "Don't be selfish," Derek snapped. "Think about the company. Think about Sarah's future. If I land this deal, I can buy her a house. Can you buy her a house, Dad? Can you buy her anything?" He turned to Sarah. "Come on, sis. Let's do this for the family." Sarah looked at me. Her eyes were pleading. She was trapped. Trapped between the brother who bullied her and the father she thought was helpless. "It is okay, Dad," she whispered. "It is okay." It wasn't okay. It was a theft. He was stealing a memory that could never be replaced. But I nodded. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. "Go ahead," I said. "Be strong, Sarah." Derek smirked. He grabbed Sarah's arm, not gently but possessively. He led her away toward the music, toward the crowd, toward the life he was trying to buy. I stood there alone in the shadows of the trellis. I watched my son walk my daughter down the aisle. I watched the guests turn and smile at them. I watched Derek, chin up, chest out, soaking in the admiration that he hadn't earned. I waited until everyone was seated. Then I walked along the perimeter of the lawn, keeping to the shadows. I found my seat. Table 19. It was in the very back corner, right next to the portable restrooms and the catering tent. The table was wobbly. The centerpiece was smaller than the others. The people sitting there were the outcasts. An elderly aunt who was hard of hearing, a cousin who had just gotten out of rehab, and me. I sat down. The ceremony was a blur. I couldn't hear the vows because the generator for the catering tent was humming loudly behind me. I couldn't see Sarah's face because a large pillar blocked my view. I just stared at my hands. The hands that had built skyscrapers. The hands that were now deemed too ugly to be seen. When the ceremony ended, the reception began. Waiters circulated with silver trays of champagne. The guests laughed and clinked glasses. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over everyone. Everyone except table 19. A waiter approached our table, holding a tray with 4 glasses of champagne left. I reached out. I needed a drink. I needed to wash the taste of dust and defeat out of my mouth. The waiter pulled the tray back. "Staff break room is round the back, buddy," he said to me. I froze. My hand hovered in midair. "Excuse me," I said. "Staff drinks are in the back," he repeated louder this time, looking at my suit. "This is vintage Dom Perignon for the guests. Don't worry, there is plenty of Bud Light in the cooler for the help." He didn't think I was a guest. He looked at my cheap suit, my weather-beaten face, my table near the toilets, and he assumed I was a driver or a janitor who had snuck in. I looked around. Derek was standing 20 feet away, laughing with a group of men. He saw me. He saw the waiter pulling the tray away. He didn't step in. He didn't come over and say, "That is my father, give him a drink." He turned his back. He pretended he didn't see. I slowly lowered my hand. "I am a guest," I said, my voice flat. "I am the bride's uncle, The waiter sneered, skeptical, but he shoved a glass at me. "Whatever you say, Pops. Just keep it down. The speeches are starting." He walked away. I held the glass. The champagne bubbled, mocking me. I didn't drink it. I placed it on the table. This was it. The bottom. The absolute bottom. I had been stripped of my name, stripped of my role, stripped of my dignity. I was a ghost at my own daughter's wedding. I looked at the time. It was almost sunset. Derek took the microphone at the head table. He tapped it. The sound echoed across the lawn. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention," Derek boomed. "Thank you all for coming. We are waiting for a very special guest to arrive. A man whose vision aligns with the future of our family company." He paused for dramatic effect. "But while we wait, let's raise a glass to—" He was interrupted. At first it was a low thrumming sound, like a heartbeat in the sky. Then it grew louder. The glasses on the tables began to vibrate. The water in the lake began to ripple. Conversation stopped. Heads turned toward the lake. The sound became a roar. The wind picked up, whipping the tablecloths and ruining the carefully hairsprayed hairdos of the ladies in the front row. A helicopter. Not a news chopper. Not a police chopper. A sleek, matte black executive helicopter. The kind that billionaire tech moguls use to commute. It banked sharply over the water, the setting sun glinting off its dark fuselage. On the side, in discreet silver letters, was the logo, Vesper Group. The crowd gasped. A ripple of excitement went through the wedding party like an electric shock. "He is here," Derek shouted over the noise, his face flushed with excitement. "I told you he was coming. The CEO is here." Monica was frantically smoothing her dress, checking her reflection in a spoon. The investors were standing up, buttoning their jackets, preparing to kiss the ring of power. The helicopter descended, landing on the private helipad at the edge of the lawn. The rotors slowed. The door opened. I sat still at table 19. I took a sip of the warm champagne. It tasted like vinegar. "Showtime," I whispered. I watched as the guests craned their necks, standing on tiptoes. Everyone wanted to see the man who owned the future. Everyone wanted to be noticed by him. Derek was practically running toward the helipad, his arms open, ready to welcome his savior. He had no idea that the man stepping out of that helicopter wasn't coming to save him. He was coming to burn him to the ground. And the match was sitting right here at table 19. The blades of the helicopter slowed to a rhythmic thrum that vibrated in the chests of every guest on the lawn. Dust and loose flower petals swirled in the air, settling onto the expensive suits of the investors Derek was so desperate to impress. I sat still at table 19, my hand resting on the stem of the glass, containing the warm vinegar champagne. I watched the scene unfold with the detachment of a man watching a building demolition he had personally rigged with explosives. The door of the black helicopter slid open. A bodyguard stepped out first, scanning the crowd with professional disinterest. Then came Leo. He looked like a god of industry. He was wearing a suit that cost more than Derek's car. A charcoal gray masterpiece that made every other man in the room look like they were wearing pajamas. He adjusted his cuffs and stepped onto the grass with an air of absolute authority. The setting sun caught the silver tie clip I had given him for his birthday, a small piece of polished steel from the first bridge I ever built. Derek and Monica were already moving. They practically ran across the lawn, their faces plastered with eager, desperate smiles. Derek buttoned his jacket, trying to look important, while Monica smoothed her hair, trying to look seductive. They reached the edge of the helipad just as Leo stepped onto the grass. Mr. Vance Derek shouted, his voice cracking slightly with nerves. "Welcome. What an honor. I am Derek Cross." We spoke on the phone. Derek extended his hand. He leaned forward, ready to embrace the man he thought was his savior. The investors in the front row stood up, craning their necks, ready to witness the handshake that would seal the $50 million deal. Leo didn't break stride. He didn't look at Derek's hand. He didn't look at Monica's dress. He didn't even look at their faces. He walked right through them. He walked past them as if they were made of glass, as if they were nothing more than landscaping decorations. Derek was left with his hand extended, grasping at empty air. His smile faltered, twitching into a look of confusion. He turned around, trying to catch up. "Mr. Vance," Derek stammered, chasing after him. "The VIP table is this way. We have a seat reserved for you right next to the groom." Leo ignored him. He walked onto the main aisle, the same aisle my daughter had just walked down. The crowd parted for him. A hush fell over the wedding reception. The only sound was the crunch of Leo's leather shoes on the grass. He wasn't walking toward the head table. He wasn't walking toward the investors. He was walking toward the back, toward the catering tents, toward the portable restrooms, toward me. Whispers started to ripple through the crowd. Where is he going? Is he lost? Why is he heading to the service area? Monica grabbed Derek's arm, her fingernails digging in. "Do something," she hissed loud enough for half the room to hear. "He is going the wrong way." Derek ran forward, cutting in front of Leo, trying to block his path. Sister Derek said, a sheen of sweat breaking out on his forehead. "Please, there must be a mistake. The restrooms are that way, but the reception is up here. You don't want to go back there. That is just the overflow seating for the distant relatives." Leo finally stopped. He stopped and looked at Derek. His eyes were cold, colder than the Chicago wind in February. He looked at Derek with an expression of such profound disappointment that it made me shiver from 30 feet away. "Move," Leo said. It wasn't a shout. It was a command. Low and dangerous. Derek froze. He stepped aside instinctively, obeying the tone of a man who commanded billions. Leo continued walking. He walked past the bewildered faces of the cousins I hadn't seen in years. He walked past the nanny who was trying to hush the crying babies. He walked straight up to table 19. He stopped in front of me. I looked up at him. I was still sitting in the wobbly plastic chair wearing the cheap polyester suit that scratched my neck. I looked like exactly what they wanted me to be. A failure. Leo didn't see a failure. Slowly, deliberately, Leo went down on one knee. The entire wedding party gasped. Monica let out a small, strangled squeak. The CEO of Vesper Group, the most eligible bachelor in the city, was kneeling on the grass in front of an old man in a bad suit. Leo reached out and gently straightened my clip-on bow tie, which had gone crooked. He brushed a speck of dust from my lapel. "Mr. Chairman," Leo said, his voice clear and ringing in the silence. "I apologize for being late." The board meeting ran long. I looked at him, my eyes stinging. "You are just in time, kid," I said softly. Leo shook his head, looking at the table, looking at the half-eaten chicken fingers, looking at the warm, cheap champagne, looking at the proximity to the toilets. "Why are you sitting here?" Leo asked. Loud enough for the back row to hear. "Why is the honorary chairman of Vesper Group sitting at a card table next to the restrooms?" "Your seat is at table 1, Harlan. Your seat is at the head of the table, right next to me." I shrugged. I was told I didn't fit the image, Leo. I was told I would embarrass the distinguished guests. Leo stood up. He turned around, slowly facing the crowd, facing Derek, facing Monica, facing the investors who were now staring at me with wide, shocked eyes. Derek's mouth was hanging open. He looked like he had been punched in the gut. Chairman Derek whispered, "What?" Leo walked toward Derek, closing the distance between them. He moved like a predator. "You told me your father was senile," Leo said, his voice rising with every word. In your loan application, Derek, you stated that Harlan Cross was mentally incompetent. You said he was a burden. You said he was confused and needed to be put in a state facility for his own safety. Derek turned pale, white as the tablecloths. I... Derek stammered. It was a misunderstanding. He is old Mr. Vance. He gets confused. Confused, Leo laughed a sharp barking sound. This man is the sharpest mind I have ever met. This man is the reason Vesper Group exists today. 5 years ago, when everyone else wrote me off, including people like you, Derek, this man sat with me in a diner and fixed a structural flaw that saved my career. Leo pointed at the new skyline visible across the lake. You see that tower going up downtown? The Helix Tower. Harlan Cross designed the wind shear mitigation system on a napkin. He has been my senior advisor for 5 years. He has reviewed every single project we have built, including yours, Derek. The color drained from Monica's face. She looked at me, then looked at Leo, then looked at her husband. He reviewed our project, she whispered. Leo nodded. Oh yes, I showed him your proposal last week. The one asking for $50 million to bail out your failing development. And do you know what he said? Leo continued, staring straight into Derek's eyes. He didn't tell me to reject it because you are his son. He didn't tell me to reject it because you treated him like garbage, although he should have. No. He told me to reject it because your math was wrong. Leo pulled a folded document from his inside pocket. You cut corners on the foundation. Derek, you used grade B steel in the load-bearing walls to save money. Harlan caught it in 5 minutes. He saved me from investing in a death trap. And he saved you from going to prison for negligence when that building inevitably collapsed. The silence on the lawn was absolute. The investors in the front row were slowly backing away from Derek, distancing themselves from the toxic fallout. Derek looked at me. For the first time in 5 years, he really looked at me. He didn't see the old man in the flannel shirt. He saw the man who had built him, the man he had betrayed. Dad, Derek croaked. I didn't know. You didn't ask, Leo cut in. You were too busy spending his retirement money on vacations. You were too busy being ashamed of his hands. The hands that built this city. The hands that fed you. Leo turned to the crowd, addressing the investors directly. Vesper Group does not do business with cowards. And we certainly do not do business with men who make their fathers sit by the toilets at their own daughter's wedding. The deal is off. Permanently. Derek's knees gave out. He actually collapsed onto the grass. Not in a faint, but in pure defeat. Monica put her hand over her mouth. Tears of humiliation streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. Suddenly there was a movement from the front row. Sarah. She hiked up her expensive wedding dress, kicking off her heels. She ran. She ran past her husband. She ran past her brother who was on the ground. She ran past the billionaire. She ran straight to table 19. Dad, she sobbed, throwing her arms around my neck, burying her face in my cheap polyester shoulder. I stood up. My legs felt strong. The limp I had faked for the last hour vanished. I wrapped my arms around my little girl. I am sorry, Dad, she cried. I am so sorry. I was so weak. I let them treat you like this. I should have stopped it. Shh, I whispered, stroking her hair. It is okay, sweetheart. You are here now. I looked over her shoulder. The entire wedding was watching us. The waiter who had refused me the champagne was hiding behind a tent flap, looking terrified. I looked at Leo. He gave me a small nod. A nod of respect. Mission accomplished. I gently pulled away from Sarah. I wiped a tear from her cheek with my thumb. Go get your husband, I said. We are leaving. Leaving, she asked. But the reception? This isn't a celebration. Sarah, I said, looking at the wreckage of Derek's ego. This is a networking event that just went bankrupt. Leo has a helicopter. I think he knows a place where we can get a real dinner. Somewhere with good wine and no assigned seating. Sarah laughed, a wet, tearful laugh. She turned and waved to Michael. He didn't hesitate. He threw his boutonniere on the ground and jogged over, grabbing my hand and shaking it firmly. Let's get out of here, Harlan Michael said. This champagne tastes like vinegar anyway. I turned to look at Derek one last time. He was still on the ground, staring at the grass. Monica was screaming at him, hitting his shoulder, blaming him for everything. I walked out from table 19. I walked past them. I walked towards the helicopter flanked by my daughter, my new son-in-law, and my chosen son. I didn't look back. The old Harlan Cross, the one who begged for scraps of affection, was dead. The new Harlan Cross was getting on a chopper to go eat steak with his real family. The helicopter blades were starting to spin faster, whipping the wedding decorations into a frenzy. But I stopped before boarding. I could hear footsteps pounding on the grass behind me. Desperate, frantic footsteps. I knew who it was without turning around. It was the sound of a man who had just watched his entire life crumble into dust. Dad, wait. Please wait. I turned slowly. Derek was running toward us, his face streaked with sweat and tears, his expensive tuxedo grass stained from where he had collapsed. Monica was trailing behind him, looking like a ship that had lost its rudder. Derek skidded to a halt 10 feet away. He looked at the helicopter, then at Leo, then at me. He looked at the luxury that was leaving him behind. Dad, you can't just leave, he gasped, his chest heaving. We have guests. We have investors. If you leave with Mr. Vance like this, I am finished. They will pull all the funding. I will lose the company by morning. I looked at him. For the first time in years, I didn't feel anger, and I didn't feel pity. I just felt a cold clarity. You lost the company a long time ago, Derek, I said, my voice steady over the noise of the rotors. You lost it the day you decided that appearances mattered more than integrity. No, Dad, listen, Derek pleaded, taking a step closer. His hands were shaking, reaching out as if to grab me. I know I made mistakes. I know I was hard on you. But I did it for us. I did it to build a legacy for the family name. You have to understand the pressure I was under. Pressure, I repeated quietly. I took a step toward him, and the crowd of investors who were hovering nearby, straining to hear, leaned in. I wanted them to hear. I wanted everyone to hear. You want to talk about pressure, Derek? Pressure is working a double shift at the steel mill with a slipped disc so you can buy your son braces. Pressure is eating oatmeal for dinner 3 weeks in a row so you can pay for your son's college tuition. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a piece of paper. It was the receipt I had kept for 5 years. The receipt from the airport bakery. 5 years ago, you came to my house and told me you were going to lose everything I said, holding the paper up. You told me you needed $200,000 to save your home. I sold my woodshop. I emptied my retirement. I gave you every penny I had because I thought I was saving my son. Derek flinched, looking at the paper as if it were a weapon. And what did you do with it? I asked, my voice rising just enough to carry across the lawn. Did you pay the bank? Did you invest in the business? No. You went to the Maldives. You bought a boat. You posted pictures of yourself drinking champagne while I lay on the floor of an unheated house having a heart attack. The crowd gasped. I heard murmurs of disgust rippling through the investors. Monica looked down at her shoes, wishing the ground would swallow her whole. You left me to die, Derek, I said. And when I called you for help, you let it go to voicemail. So don't stand here now and tell me about family. Don't tell me about legacy. You spent your inheritance while I was still alive, and now the account is closed. Derek fell to his knees. This time, it wasn't a performance. The weight of the truth had finally crushed him. "Dad, please," he sobbed, burying his face in his hands. "I am sorry. I am so broke, Dad. I owe everyone. If you leave, I go to jail. Please help me. Just one last time." I looked at my son kneeling in the dirt. Part of me, the old part, the weak part, wanted to reach out, wanted to write one more check. But then I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Leo. And on my other side, Sarah slipped her hand into mine. "I have helped you enough," I said. "I helped you by letting you fall, because that is the only way you are ever going to learn how to stand up." I turned to Leo. "Let's go home, son." We walked up the steps of the helicopter. Sarah and Michael followed us, leaving the wedding reception behind. As the door closed, I saw Derek looking up, his face a mask of absolute despair. The engine roared and we lifted off, leaving the Grand View Resort shrinking beneath us until Derek Cross was just a tiny speck in the distance, insignificant and small. As we flew over the sparkling water of Lake Michigan, Leo opened a bottle of real champagne. He poured 4 glasses. "To freedom," Leo said, raising his glass. "To family," I said, clinking my glass against his. "The real kind." 1 year later. The sun was setting over the Gulf of Mexico, painting the water in shades of orange and purple. The air was warm and smelled of salt and freedom. I sat in the fighting chair on the back deck of the Lady Sarah, a 60-foot sport fishing yacht that Leo had bought for my 77th birthday. I was holding a fishing rod, feeling the gentle tug of the current. My hands, once rough and cracked from cold Chicago winters, were now tanned and strong. "Got a bite, old man." Leo walked out onto the deck holding 2 cold beers. He was wearing shorts and a t-shirt, looking younger and happier than I had ever seen him. The stress of the boardroom was gone, replaced by the easy confidence of a man who knows, loved. "Not yet," I said, taking the beer. "Just nibbling. Patience, kid. Fishing is like business. You have to wait for the right moment." Leo laughed, sitting down on the cooler next to me. "I got an update from the private investigator today," Leo said, his tone turning slightly serious. "About Chicago." I didn't take my eyes off the water. "Tell me." "Derek is working at a supermart in the suburbs," Leo said. "He is stocking shelves on the night shift. Apparently he lost the house, the cars, everything. Monica left him about 2 months after the wedding. She moved back in with her parents. Derek is living in a studio apartment above a garage. He is paying off his debts slowly, $10 at a time." I nodded slowly. I felt a pang of sadness, but it was distant, like a memory of a pain I used to have. "Is he sober?" I asked. Leo nodded. "Yeah, clean and sober for 6 months. He looks humbled. The investigator sent a picture. He looks like you, Harlan. He looks tired, but he looks real." "Good," I said quietly. "Maybe there is hope for him yet. Maybe when he finishes paying for his sins, he will be a man worth knowing. But until then, he stays there." "And Sarah?" Leo asked. "Sarah is great," I said, smiling. "She sent me a video this morning. The baby is walking. Michael got that promotion at the garage. They are coming down to visit next month. You need to get the guest room ready." "I will," Leo said. "I can't believe I am going to be an uncle." "You are going to be a terrible uncle," I teased. "You are going to spoil that kid rotten." Leo grinned, looking out at the horizon. Guilty as charged. We sat there in silence for a while, watching the sun dip below the waterline. It was a perfect moment. The kind of moment I never thought I would have. 5 years ago, I was eating Thanksgiving dinner alone in a diner, thinking my life was over. I thought my value was 0 because my blood relatives had discarded me. But sitting there on that boat, surrounded by the ocean and the young man who had saved my life, I realized the truth. Life has a funny way of balancing the books. It takes away the things you think you need to make room for the things you actually deserve. I reeled in my line and set the rod in the holder. I took a sip of beer and looked at the camera at the invisible audience that I knew was listening to my story. Family isn't about whose name you carry. It isn't about the DNA you share. That is just biology. That is an accident of birth. Real family is about who shows up when you are broken. Real family is the stranger who sits down at your table when everyone else has walked away. Real family is the person who breaks down your door when you stop answering the phone. I spent a lifetime trying to buy the love of a son who saw me as an ATM. I thought if I gave enough, if I sacrificed enough, he would finally respect me. But respect isn't for sale, and love isn't a transaction. I lost a son that day at the wedding, but I gained a daughter who finally found her voice. And I found a son who didn't share my blood, but shared my heart. So if you are listening to this and you are feeling alone, if you are feeling used by the people who are supposed to love you, listen to me. Don't be afraid to walk away. Don't be afraid to eat alone. Because sometimes the empty chair next to you is just waiting for the right person to sit down. My name is Harlan Cross. I am 77 years old, and I am the richest man in the world. Not because of the yacht or the bank account, but because I finally know where I belong. Thank you for listening to my story. If you enjoyed this journey, if you felt the anger and the joy along with me, please hit that like button. It helps more people find this message. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to choose between your dignity and your family? I read every single comment. Subscribe to the channel for more stories about justice, resilience, and the power of the human spirit. Until next time, keep your head up and never let anyone tell you that you don't belong at the head of the table.